Hello, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast, where we incorporate a panoramic view of flute-related topics. I am your host, Heidi K. Begay, and this is episode 73, NFA highlights from the Wm.S. Haynes Booth. Today's sponsor is brought to you by J&K Productions. Did you know that not only are they a production company for podcasts, but they are a recording company for musicians? Any musical recording needs that you may have, J&K Productions can fulfill that need. They have all the necessary equipment and expertise to record your next flute recording for college or graduate auditions, competitions, summer festivals, or a flute album. J&K Productions can record any setup imaginable, from solo flute, small chamber, flute and piano, and much more. Consider J&K Productions for your next recording project. Contact them at jkproductions.media. Good morning, everyone. We are starting nice and early here in Salt Lake City, 9 a.m. with Dr. Katherine Ramirez. And not only is she a beautiful flutist, she is an international prize winner and also an educator. She teaches at St. Olaf College. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you, Heidi. So good to be here, even this early.
Awesome.
It's really not that early, but we got it.
Yeah, back at home it's 10.
Yeah.
That's why I have to keep telling myself.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, for the listeners out there, it was a total, I don't believe in flukes, but it was a total fluke. I was finishing dinner at some bistro, and I was walking back to my Airbnb, and Katherine was coming my way, and of course I had to stop her and bother her as she's trying to get somewhere. But those, these NFA conventions, that's what it's about, stopping people and, meeting up.
Yeah, it's fun to get get reacquainted, catch up with good friends, and meet new friends. So I love the convention. It's really fun to be here. And I'm so glad we ran into each other yesterday.
Yeah. It was perfect timing. Mm-hmm. It really was. Yeah. And we discovered that we have something in common. Mm-hmm. I'm a Chicago native, and you were in Chicago.
I lived in Chicago from 2003 to 6, and I was doing mostly new music, playing a lot of new music, and teaching at DePaul University's Community Music Division, as well as like a bunch of little Suzuki places as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed my time there we even talked about Chicago being a clean New York, right?
Yes, I remember that. Yes, and I tell that to Uber drivers and taxi drivers, and they're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm like, no, I swear. It really is. Literally, Chicago offers anything and everything that you could ever want. Yeah, it's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I miss it.
Tears just fell.
Yeah. So I'm trying to convince my husband someday to go back, but he's a country boy. Oh. And I'm a city girl, so finding that, balance. Because when there's too many people around, he's just
overwhelmed.
He's overwhelmed. He's just like, I hate the traffic, I hate the noise. But me, I live off of that.
Yeah, I live in Minnesota now. Like St. Olaf is in Northfield, Minnesota, a really small town. And when I first moved there, I was moving from Houston, where I was doing my doctorate at Rice. And when I first got to Northfield, I was thinking, where's the traffic? I need the traffic.
That's
so
funny.
I can kind of relate to what you're going through.
Yeah. When you were at Rice, did you study with Leon Beising?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
okay.
it was
I didn't
amazing.
know who was at Rice at the time.
Yeah,
Oh,
Leon.
cool. Oh.
So, lots of experiences. I'm really grateful for being able to travel to big cities, but now that I'm living in a small town, I also appreciate that as well. You wake up and you hear the birds, and it's really lovely.
Yeah, that's amazing. So since we are here at the NFA, let's talk about your two events that are happening. On August 2nd, you were a part of Elemental Influences, Earth, Air, Fire, and Water. How did that go?
Oh my gosh, that was really well received. I was playing a flute choir piece, a world premiere, for the Cultural Outreach Committee that I'm on. So the flutists from that committee, we played a piece by a Native American composer, William Linthicum Blackhorse, who wrote a piece called Inipi Alawan, and it's a sweat lodge song.
Interesting.
And so it was in the dark. We were sitting in a circle. There were rocks in the middle and a pail of water that was being passed around. And there would be, we'd make effects of the water splashing on these really hot rocks. We had contrabass flute, 3 bass flutes, 2 altos, 4 flutes, and a piccolo, and spoken parts as well. And then Will, the composer, he also sang at the end beautiful Native American songs that have only been heard within a sweat lodge, which is, it's
very
a sacred
rare.
ceremony. Yeah, so it wasn't a sweat lodge ceremony, but it was in imitation of one because it's pretty special. You don't want to. You have to respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did not mention this. It did not come up in our. I cannot talk. It's too early in the morning. I need another double espresso shot. But we did not talk about this on our sidewalk discussion. But my husband is Native American.
Really?
Yeah, he's 100% Navajo.
Wow.
Yep, and Begay means like his grandfather, and we've Americanized the pronunciation, but how they, as the Dene people, would say it is Begay.
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 Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So then Begay is the English.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So so I know all too well how hard it is to get those sacred pieces out from their ceremonies for them to share, so that way it can be documented, researched, just honored and and respected and brought to people's attention.
Yeah.
When I was working on my thesis for my master's, since I had the inside scoop and I had connections, I was trying to work wholeheartedly with some Hopi Indians.
Oh, wow.
To kind of find the parallels between Catherine Hoover's music and Hopi traditional music.
Oh, nice.
But it was really hard because they're on the fence about sharing that, and I totally get it. I mean, if you talk to like the older generations, they want to preserve it. They don't want to share it. And then, to be blunt, they don't want to share it with the white man. I mean, it's because so much was taken from them.
Right. Yeah.
But then you talk with people like my husband who know the traditions, but who have been westernized. They can see how the current generation want to cherish those songs and to share it. So he sees how the new generation want to preserve. And if we don't share it,
right.
Then how are we going to be able to preserve it if they're not known? So it's very interesting to see from the family standpoint,
right,
both sides.
So, and in a way, like when we were rehearsing it, I mean, it was, and he would sing the songs for us to you know, play the tunes. They were so moving.
Yes.
Some of us were in tears because it was just so beautiful.
Yep. Yeah. And the sweat lodge, from what I know from research and again from family talking, it's a spiritual experience.
It's a spiritual experience.
Yeah. It's like, and literally, I mean, you're sweating out toxins. Physically, that's what's happening. But it's like the impurities and I guess I could say, I'm paraphrasing and I don't want to be misquoted, but like the sins. And it's washing that away, and coming back home and being balanced again with like Mother Earth and Father Sky.
Wow.
Just kind of like a centering.
Yeah, that sounds really beautiful. And this piece was actually, what Will was talking about with us in the rehearsal was that it was also calling on the spirits too, ancestors. And so it's almost like a community building too, but with those past.
Yeah. And just to be so clear, because I know how touchy this subject can be, I just want to say again, like, this is how I understand it. But if you are interested in this, I would highly recommend to do actual in-depth research.
Right.
But this is just from my understanding.
This is just from the very limited experience that we've had.
Yeah, but no, that's amazing. And I know Mr. Blackhorse. He went to Texas Tech as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm from El Paso, so shout out to West Texas.
Yeah, his music is beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
He had another performance on that concert where he was reciting and singing with Mariana Gariazzo, who is the chair of the Cultural Outreach Committee, and she was playing bass flute, and it was a really great piece too. So he's also a performer. So
we took a music administration class together with William Ballinger. So it was fun. I learned a lot.
That's so good.
And then Julie Kim Walker was there.
Yeah.
She's a friend of mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was on Piccolo, which represented the children's voices. Isn't that sweet?
Oh
Isn't
that beautiful? I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
What? I am so bummed I could not go to that. That sounds amazing.
It was really beautiful. And it was in the dark.
Oh.
And the audience was kind of gathered around us. We were sitting in a circle on the floor on blankets. And it was a really special moment.
It sounds intimate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And your other event is the Monumental Matinee.
That's today.
Today, August 3rd at 11:45 a.m. So let's talk about that.
Okay, so I'll be playing a trio by David Heath. It's called Return to Avalon. And I'll be playing that with Amy Iyun-Tu and Yevgeny Morozov on piano. And Yevgeny and I were classmates at Yale back in the 2000s. And he's married to Amy. Oh. So we decided, let's do a trio. And we came up with this. This one is 2 flutes and piano with each flute doubling. First flute's doubling pick. So Amy's going to be playing piccolo as well. And I'm going to be doubling on alto.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah. So in the descriptions that we were able to find of this piece, David Heath dedicates this piece to all those who believe we are all one. And so it's kind of relevant, to our time. So we hope it'll resonate with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are all human.
We're all human.
Yeah. And going back to your first event, just think about the Native American talk. I mentioned, if somebody picked up on it, we know the Navajo tribe as Navajo, but it's actually kind of a derogatory. Oh. It kind of means thief. I think the Spaniards gave them that name. Again, research. But they call themselves Diné.
Diné.
Because that just means people. We are people.
Wow.
And they speak the Diné language, and so we don't know that though, in our culture. We're like, the Navajos are in the Southwest. Same thing with, I can't think off the top of my head. Sioux. Yeah. That's a derogatory term. That means snake.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And then a lot of it is, it could be other cultures coming in with the wars. But there is also, my husband mentions this a lot, there were a lot of intertribal wars going on too. So a lot of times we're like, those white people putting on names to the Indians. But sometimes it was intertribal. Yeah. And so anyways, I don't know who gave them the name Sioux, but there's Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, I believe. And I think they just go by that, but we say the Lakota Sioux. But Sioux means snake.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So again, students out there, professionals out there, research it. Don't go by me. But this is just off the top of my head. This was totally ad-lib. We weren't even planning on this. Native American history session.
What, this whole thing, this conversation about Native Americans, so I like public television.
Okay.
And I noticed that there was a new show. It's a kid's show. It's called Molly from Denali. And it's about Native Alaskans.
No way.
Yes, and it's wonderful. Yeah, and they talk about, this is a kid's show. It's a cartoon, right?
Okay, yeah.
But they work it in such a way where they kind of open up that culture to others, and in a really simple, beautiful way that's accessible to children and adults alike, And they even talk about how Molly, she's a little kid, her grandfather was in a camp.
Yeah.
And so,
wow.
It brings up these deep issues in a way that's approachable and not too divisive. So, I don't know. Traumatizing, yeah. And healing, I think, in a way, too. So I think it's important that these conversations happen.
Yes.
And another event that I did here was a panel discussion on diversity and inclusion. So that was another thing that was, I think the discussions are starting to happen. People are becoming more receptive and open to having those discussions, and I think it's important to continue them.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's amazing that we are seeing that in cartoons.
Yeah.
Because then that means we are directing that towards children.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can know and have this knowledge, as they're growing up, all the better. Mm-hmm. Then that way it's not just, that one chapter in a history book.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you just got a new flute.
Yeah. I'm so happy with my new flute. So I just got a Burkhart-Manka combination, a Burkhart body, 998 silver with gold tone holes, and a 14-karat gold Manka head joint.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm going to be playing on that one today at the concert.
Oh,
cool.
As
well as alto flute. But yeah, I'm really psyched to be able to play it. Yeah. It's a beautiful instrument.
And you said that the flute kind of chose you.
Yeah, it did. So, like in a previous flute purchase, I had to end up with just the one that I had tried because there were no other inline flutes, and so that was the one I ended up with. And I always kind of had this nagging feeling like, well, maybe there was something better for me out there, but I didn't get to try it. And so this time, I tried everything. I tried all different kinds of flutes, different combinations of flute body head joint, and this combination, Manka Burkhart, just kept coming back to me like, oh my gosh, this one is really special. Okay, let's try something else. And then coming back, and then, oh my gosh, this is still really special. Yeah, and so in that way, I think it chose me.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
It's meant to be.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful.
So if you have any advice or a tip to offer students and or professionals in choosing a flute, feel free to share, because just looking at this booth next to me,
oh my gosh,
that's how I feel when I go into a flute store. Yeah. And there's like a bazillion flutes, and you're told, try them and pick one. And you're like, well, where do I start?
Where do I start? Start at one end and then work your way to the other end. Yeah, so I went through several stages of trying flutes.
Okay.
And it basically took me a year of trying flutes several times throughout the year. At first, I maybe had like 11 at a time to try it, which is kind of a lot already, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we're looking at a table that has maybe like 200 flutes. Okay, so I got 11 at a time, and
nice.
I got it. I think the first time I tried flutes, I went through Flute Center of New York, and they allow you to try several at a time. So I laid them all out, and one thing that was really helpful was that I recorded myself.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. I recorded myself on each of these flutes. I kept a little, diary organized, okay, which one was I trying? Because I didn't always have someone there to listen.
Sure.
So, like, if I had time in the early morning, I'm not going to ask someone else to just come at early morning. Just record it and play through in different spaces. So I tried it in my studio. I tried it in a little recital hall. I tried it in a hallway. I just
nice.
Different places.
Smart.
And recorded myself, and then started eliminating, like as if I were auditioning the flutes. So
nice.
There was like a prelim round, there was a semifinal round, and there was the final round.
Yeah. You did not pass.
I'm sorry. You did not. And my flute was in all the rounds.
Nice.
I just like advanced it through all the rounds. Just so I could keep comparing it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it needs to be better than that.
Yeah.
So
it won the job.
Yeah, and it won the job.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love the different venues.
Yeah.
That's very smart.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, even too, thinking about this, like finding a really dead space.
Yeah,
like
a closet
carpet.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dead spaces.
Low ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because sometimes we're put in these places to perform.
Right.
Like Orlando, I did a lecture recital, and it was a dead room. Mm-hmm. And Lisa Garner was very supportive and said I did great, but she's like, yeah, she's like, that little like palette of wooden floor over there, I would have stood on that. To help your sound bounce a little bit more. And I was like, now I know for next time.
Wow,
but that got me thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about, though, too, is if you're trying this in a small, dead room and it sounds bad, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to sound bad in a big, boomy room.
True.
Because it could sound great in a big, boomy room.
Yeah,
Like the power, the thing is, like, each flute has its own, like, power, you know? And so, like, in a small room, if it's a powerful flute, it's not going to sound good because the room, like, the sound doesn't quite fit the room. Like, the sound is too big for the room.
Got it.
But in a bigger space, maybe slightly more live space, that flute's going to sound amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's almost like you want to try this flute out in a variety of venues, but you have to be careful to not necessarily eliminate it if it's in a terrible space.
Yeah. That's a good disclaimer.
Yeah.
I guess I was saying, like, in addition to all those other, like, give it a shot.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Don't just do it in the one, because then you're limiting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the bathroom, you know. Sixth grade band, you know, practicing in the bathroom. Oh my gosh, it sounds so good.
I sound so good in the bathroom. Whenever I'm having a really bad tone day, I'll just go to the bathroom. Like, okay.
I feel good now.
Yeah. I can stand a little taller today. I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for offering those tips.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming. It's like going into Lowe's and seeing 20 different reds. Like strawberry, fire truck, berry red. I'm like, I don't know. They're all red to me. And then people get, like you said, you have a different head joint, and people get creative with the combinations.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh.
Yeah, it's like once you find a head that works for you, try it on different bodies, and then, you know, kind of narrow it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a process, and I think it's best to not rush that process.
Okay.
From what I've learned in my experience. Just
I love it.
Take your time. Yeah.
Yeah, being patient.
Yeah, take your time, try everything. Like at the candy store. I'll have one of each.
Oh, nice. It does feel
Actually, I'm trying to get off sugar, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I talked about that in one of my, I usually do picks for my podcast episodes.
Oh, okay.
Like, it could be a book or, you know, a candy or non-candy. But one of my picks was eliminating sugar or refined sugar from my diet because I was having, like, really serious, like, heart palpitations.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Where it was all... I'm like, oh my gosh. And it would hit me like 15, 20 minutes after I had a piece of candy or cookie.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But like when I eat raspberries and strawberries.
Yeah, the fruit has the fiber in there, so it kind of tempers everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when you said candy store,
watch your, maybe a fruit store or something.
Yeah,
better.
there you go.
Vegetables.
Your local farmer's market.
Yeah, there you go. Local farmer's market. I'll have one of those. One of each.
Exactly. Well, I'm so glad our paths have crossed.
Yeah,
I have seen you
too.
at so many conventions, and I'm so glad I was finally brave enough to say, Katherine, I'm a fan. But you're so lovely, and I don't want to keep you from your warm-up because I know you have important performances coming up, but thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much, Heidi. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad you stopped me yesterday, and we chatted. It was a really great conversation.
Yeah.
And good luck with this. It's a fantastic thing you're doing with Flute 360.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast episode. We are live, as you can hear, at the National Flute Association in Salt Lake City. And here I am with the wonderful, notorious Dr. Cate Hummel. And thank you so much for being willing to share your time and talents with me and the listeners.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm so glad I bumped into you. I think it was the Strawbringer booth.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. So I've been a huge fan of yours, And the flute community, I know I can speak for all of us. You are such a huge force in education, and we thank you for that.
Oh, well, it always seemed like an important thing to me, so that's where I'm going.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you're teaching outside of Chicago.
Right, out in the suburbs. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's my hometown.
That's what you told me.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So I feel connected already just because of that location. And yeah, it's home. Yeah. So let's talk about your blog.
Okay.
So whatever you'd like to share about it, I love the content. The topics are really great. It's easy to maneuver on your site. So I've even printed off information for my students on a particular topic.
Right.
So tell me about your inspiration. Tell me how often you put content out, what you've learned from it, whatever you want to share.
Well, as far as my inspiration, I would say my own experience was how I got started, because when I was growing up, my parents didn't see why I needed to have flute lessons because I had a band director. And, well, it was a bit of a shock when I got to college. And all the things that I learned that my band directors hadn't taught me was a long time ago, sort of the impetus that led to me writing the blog in the past 5 or 6 years. Also, I mean, I've been teaching in schools for a long time. You know, I go in and teach kids during their band periods or, lunch and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
oftentimes they'll come in and say, well, my band director told me this. One of my favorites is the kiss and roll.
Oh, don't you love that?
Yeah, where you have to center the hole. Yeah, well, we all know that the problem with that is it puts the flute too high on your lip.
Yes.
And then they wonder what
this story.
They wonder why the students sound sharp or they have a small sound, and it's because the flute's just too high on their chin.
Sure.
So I don't know. I literally woke up one Sunday and said, I need to start writing a blog. And so I found WordPress and wrote my first article, which was The Legend of Kiss and Roll.
Oh, perfect.
So I guess for about 3 years on Sundays, I'd sit down and write 500 words, because I also know band directors are really busy people.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that more than 500 or 600 words was... They couldn't handle it. They don't have time. They don't have time. So I was just trying to take little nuggets of what I've learned over the years working with my own students and from my own studies as well. So there's a lot about tone and placement on your lip and stuff like that. That's really important. So
yeah, my first band director, I won't name names because I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he taught me kiss and roll too. So, and that was Illinois back in the 90s,
Well,
and
it's still really
very
common.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, they're brass players, they're percussionists, they're reed players.
True.
And so they're all used to interacting, if you play a wind instrument of any kind, they're used to interacting with a mouthpiece. And, of course, we haven't got a mouthpiece, which is my other big idea, is that, we haven't got a mouthpiece, so we have to do what a mouthpiece does with our lips.
Yeah.
And, I think the other thing that I find a lot is band directors, because they're working with large groups of kids, they're looking for a cookie-cutter solution.
Yeah.
If you've got a clarinet, all you really have to do is jam it in your face and blow. You've just got to get the air pressurized enough to get the reed to start to vibrate. But we've got to shape and direct the air. So, the placement on your lip and the angle that you're blowing and, all of those things.
It matters.
They need to know more about that.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, they're trying to... I really think that the whole kiss and roll thing started to begin with because they were looking for a cookie-cutter solution that would work for most people. Mm-hmm. And I would say with a big ish.
Yeah.
It works-ish.
Yeah.
So...
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're right. And not just even the placement, but I've had to struggle working with band directors to convince them that, perhaps don't teach a beginner alternate fingerings right away because they want their kids to sound in tune instantly. I'm like,
and they want them instantly to play with dynamics, and I think for flute that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, yes, in the beginning stages, that high F is going to be, whatever the pitch tendency.
It tends to climb. Yeah.
Right, to be sharp, and you want to fork it to bring down the pitch, but as they're building that technique, they need to know fundamental fingerings.
Right, absolutely. And another big issue, I think, as long as we're talking about fingerings, is which B flat do you teach first?
Yes.
Now, I think if you're studying with a private teacher, it probably doesn't matter that much because you've got somebody that's supervising.
Yeah.
But when a band director teaches thumb B flat first, and then they have to play a chromatic scale, they start rolling their thumb for a chromatic scale.
Interesting.
From between B and B flat.
Yes.
Which absolutely makes me crazy.
Yeah,
I would rather see them teach them the 1 and 1 first.
Okay. Even for stability, too.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
For stability and for a number of reasons. And then when they know a chromatic scale, which, depending on the school, they can usually play a chromatic scale within maybe 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
Then you can start showing that there are other ways to play B flat.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say that B flat's like voting. Sometimes it's a really clear choice, and it's an obvious answer, and there are sometimes when you have a jerk, a moron, and an idiot.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out which one is the least offensive of the three.
Yeah. I love it. The least of the two evils or the three evils.
Yeah, because we've all been in that situation where
on the ballot.
There's not a single one that is really satisfying.
Recent elections.
We're not going to.
We won't get into that, but
no politics.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's so cool to hear the backstory and the inspiration behind your blog. What lessons have you learned while creating your blog? Whether it's on the technological side or publishing things to the website. Like, I had to get real savvy with my podcast on knowing the ins and outs of my website and certain other websites that coincide. So,
I have to say I had some accomplices in getting the word out that the blog was there. Not so much in the flute community, but in the music education community. I have an adult student that I met when she was right out of college. And she's a band director in the Joliet schools. And I started doing it, and she's on a Facebook group. I think it's just the band director group, but they won't let people like me who are private instructors on this group. But every time I would do a post, she would post it to the band directors group. So I got a lot of following that way.
Interesting.
So, I think the other thing is just... in WordPress, it's really easy to tag things, like tag topics. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons why you find that it's easy to find things. Because I try to put some tags and some categories as to what the topic is. So if you're looking for something specific, you can do that pretty easily.
Smart.
So it's already kind of indexed.
Love it.
So
yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. So. Future goals with the blog? Future projects that are coming up?
I wrote almost every week for 3 years, so I've got over 100 articles.
Wow.
And I think at this point I'm looking at taking those and putting them into a book.
Okay, yeah.
So, because I think people would like to have something they could put on their desk.
Yeah.
So I see it going that way, and I'm also starting to get into doing more video content and stuff like that. And I don't know whether I'm going to do it through Dr. Cate's Flute Tips or whether I'm going to create another forum. I haven't decided how that's going to go just yet.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. But, I mean, I've still got a couple more articles that I need to put up, and, that's actually what I'm going to get back to when I get back from this trip, so... finishing up the few articles that it's like, oh yeah, I should talk about C#, for example.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I know that's got to drive band directors crazy. And it's really touching how well received it's been among my flute colleagues too. I mean that means a lot to me. So I'm really glad to have been a help to a lot of different kinds of people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Those sound like very exciting updates.
Yeah.
It turning into a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Podcasters do that quite often. They'll take all their content from episodes and put it down in written form and then sell it as an ebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's that's exactly what I was going to do.
Yeah,
so.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take a little bit of work because I have to say I created the content sort of in a random form, like whatever occurred to me. It's like I should talk about this. So even though the website is cataloging it for me, I'm going to have to take all those things and organize them by topic. So
okay. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a project.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least I don't have to do a whole lot of writing now. I mean, most of the writing's been done. It's just like organizing it and formatting it and,
Yeah, all that,
Yeah.
I get that. Very cool. So this next academic year that's coming up in August, 2019 through 2020, any studio events in the works, any plans with concerts or recordings?
Well, I've got a couple of trips coming up. In the fall, I'm looking forward to going to Pittsburgh and doing some things there, both through my sponsor, Altus Flutes, and hopefully doing some things at Carnegie Mellon University. And there's a couple of dealers that deal with Altus and Azumi flutes, and I'll be doing some school clinics there. And then I have done a lot of work with Quinlan and Fabish, which is one of the big dealers in the Chicago area. In the spring, I go over to Indiana, and oftentimes we'll do clinics over there. So hopefully we'll get to do that again, and get to a few colleges and universities. I mean, my other interest, of course, is Marcel Moïse and his teaching. My dissertation was on tone development through interpretation. So the things that Moïse has to say about musicianship and musicality and finding color. I mean, he was always talking about a luminous sound. I mean, it's just always so evocative to me.
I love that adjective.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful? Yeah. I mean, it just sort of conjures up magic.
Yeah, in the word itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Oh, that's so cool. What events have you gone to? And I apologize, I haven't looked at the guidebook. I feel a little out of sync just because I've been at this wonderful booth.
Right.
Any events that you've presented this year?
Well, actually, I'm playing tomorrow.
Awesome.
I'm going to be doing 2 pieces by Adrienne Albert, who's a composer from California.
Okay.
Her pieces are Fantasia and Sunswept. And so I'm playing on the final flute course, 2:30 tomorrow afternoon on Sunday.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah.
Oh, good. I hope to go to that.
Oh, well, that would be wonderful. Yeah. I'd love to see you there.
Yeah. Well, is there any final thoughts or piece of advice, anything that you want to share from your heart that that you want the listeners to know? I know it's a very general thing, but what I've been saying this time here at the Haynes booth is that one of my biggest lessons and takeaways from being a podcaster, which feels weird that I'm giving myself that identity, but I've learned is the minute I say goodbye, that's a wrap, the guest goes, no, I want to say this, and that. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. So I always give everyone one last opportunity to share. If you are so inclined.
I don't know. I mean, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share what I've learned with students and with other flutists, and to work with the music educators, and it's just a real privilege.
Yeah,
it's a real privilege to be able to share. So
that's amazing. Well, thank you for your time and talents.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a great rest of the weekend.
Thanks, you too.
And safe travels.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Flute 360 podcast. I am here with the wonderful David G. Weiss.
That's it.
Dave Weiss is a wonderful friend of mine. We met back in 2012 when he was a guest artist with the Texas Flute Society, and he generously gave his time and talent at that festival. And I know the attendees had a really fun time seeing his ethnic flutes and sharing his experience with Broadway. So welcome, Dave, and I'm so glad you're here.
It's great to be here. It's great back to be in the NFA. My first time here in Salt Lake City. It's really lovely. I really like it here.
Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah. It turns out my wife is a violist, Katarzyna Briller-Weiss, and she is in Lake Tahoe right now with the Classical Tahoe Festival. And she's playing, she's working, but I got to be her assistant, and they call me there the viola Sherpa, because I'm just pulling her viola around for her. But I spent a week with her in lovely Tahoe and then drove over here. That's the plan, and it's not a short drive, over 500 miles, but incredible country around here. This the desert and all that. So it's been quite a trip. I'm a little tired from all the driving, I gotta say, but but here I am, and it's great. And we're here in the exhibition hall with all the flutes in the background and everything.
It's not too loud right now, which is nice.
Right? Yeah.
When you got that piccolo in your ear,
the piccolo, or everyone's playing Daphnis in the background.
Mozart exposition.
Right.
Yeah. So we were saying how wonderful it is with these NFA conventions to reconnect with old friends. And
exactly. You know what's funny is right when I walked in the exhibition hall, I live in Brooklyn, New York, in a neighborhood called Park Slope, and the first person I run into is Greg Patillo, the so-called beatbox flutist, who lives maybe a half a mile from me in Brooklyn. We never see each other in New York.
Right.
Absolutely never. But it seems at every convention, at least the ones I go to, he's right there,
Yeah.
And matter of fact, in 2012, when I was at your festival, the Texas Flute Society, that was also, Greg and I did a joint thing together in Vegas. It was about playing live with laptops.
Oh,
and
cool.
we did that together. So that's kind of a bond that me and him have, because we have our own different approaches using playing live with a laptop. And that's kind of why I'm here at this convention. Is on Sunday morning I'm doing a presentation on improvising, learning how to improvise, especially for people that are non-improvisers, which can be quite difficult jump to make.
Yeah.
And I do both. I learned as a young boy as a classical flutist, but very early on I also started playing jazz and rock and roll and R&B and stuff. And that's a completely different thing from sitting in an orchestra. So, but over the years I learned how to teach, or at least suggest to people how to get started with improvisation.
Okay.
And it's it can be rather daunting, because I don't know if there's really any proper method books for it. There's certainly method books about learning to play jazz and things. Like when I got started, there wasn't really that much. I mean, I'm in my late 50s, and so I'm talking about in the 70s, in my formative years of junior high and high school and college and stuff like that. There were a couple books. I think the Jamie Aebersold books just started coming out then. But you were kind of on your own, learning how to play improvisation. And the way you did it then was you put on a Herbie Band record or a Hubert Laws record, and you transcribe the solos. You learn to do it that way. And that's still, I think, one of the main things for people to do, to learn style, to learn feel. That's hugely important. But I have some basic exercises that I developed over the years that I think takes, say, someone that's been learning or has been a full-time classical flutist from, 2 or 3 years, or any amount of time. This could also work for anybody that's a jazz flutist but wants to do basic exercises. What I do is I try to break things down to the basic essence of doing interval studies. And these are very similar to the Weiss book. It's in French and I cannot pronounce it. Mécanique chromatique, something like that.
Excellent, monsieur.
Mon français est très mauvais. So
excellent.
I actually had 7 years of French and I can't speak it because I'm an American. My wife is Polish and they just laugh at me trying to speak Polish. It's just it's impossible for me. So, but anyway, that book by Weiss, it has what we call interval studies, where you ascend in seconds, minor thirds, major thirds, fourths, etc. But it starts off on low C, it goes all the way to high C. It's about as hard as it can be right from the get-go. And what I did is I adapted what I call, beginning, intermediate, and advanced studies. So I did it my way instead of doing it his way. And it would take a while to explain it, but I think that exercise book is, it's not good. It's as a matter of fact, it's counterproductive to a beginner because it's too hard to begin with. What I do is I get people to play interval studies, say ascending major seconds, go up an octave, and you start in the middle of the instrument. You don't start on low C. You start on low G, and you just go ascend up major seconds, and then the sound and descend major seconds. You do it with the music. Then you do it without the music, but you change the key.
Okay.
And you have to think it.
Okay.
And the possibilities are endless of what you could do from there. You just start, for the classical musician, you start with the written one octave up and down, and then you go from there.
Okay.
And if you could do it with a teacher who's sitting on you a little bit, okay, now try this, now try this. Now change the rhythm, now change the articulation.
Cool.
Now play it like you're playing bebop. Now play it like you're playing cool 60s music.
Yeah.
Now play it like you're playing salsa. Change the feel. Now play it like you're playing Mozart.
Wow. Yeah. Endless.
And the thing is, the major seconds are very gnarly, and these are kind of my warm-up, the warm-ups that I've been doing forever.
Oh, cool.
But then you do it in fourths, then you do it in sevenths, then you do it in minor ninths. You do it without the music. And this is just a departure point. You start learning then to make short phrases and then transposing them in your ear. And this is what jazz musicians have been doing forever. Jazz is largely an unwritten art form, except for the melody and, in the band, the arrangements. For the most part, it's improvisation. And what jazz musicians do is they take a lick, which is a short phrase. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-da. That's the famous beginning of John Coltrane's Giant Steps. That's like the first thing that he plays. Da-ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da. I can't sing, so you probably have no idea what I'm saying.
No, it's great.
But a jazz musician will learn, and that is a 2-5-1 change. That's like the 2 chord, the 5 chord to the 1 chord.
Yeah.
About as basic as it gets.
Okay.
But if you were to take that lick and start learning it in 12 keys, you were doing what so many jazz musicians have been doing since the beginning.
I see.
Or at least since they really started working really hard on it, say, 30s and the 40s. And that's not to say that people didn't work hard on it beforehand.
Right.
But this is just a technique I learned from older, when I was studying very seriously, like I said, in high school, college. That's what we learned to do. You took a Sonny Rollins solo, you tore it apart, you found a lick in it that you liked, you learned it in 12 keys. You did this without the music.
Yep.
So that sort of thinking is what you have to learn to do if you want to learn to become an improviser, is what we call instant composition. And that's what improvising really is, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the essence of the workshop. And we're going to, I'm hoping people can come. It was supposed to say in the booklet, bring your instrument, but for some reason that didn't get in there.
Boo.
And also they put an improviser's workshop at 8:45 in the morning. NFA, that's not a good idea. I mean, we get up at late hours. Matter of fact, there's kind of a joke that I'm going to say. There's a famous photo that was taken in 1958 on a brownstone in Harlem. And the name of the photo is A Great Day in Harlem. And it has, I don't know, 60 or 70 all very famous jazz musicians from that era. Count Basie is there, Dizzy Gillespie, Jerry Mulligan, all sorts of great names. Unfortunately, Frank West might be in there. I'm not sure. I'd have to look for it. But the reason why they were able to get so many great people at one time in one place is they did it on a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And like, nobody's working. It's for musicians. That's kind of like Sunday morning,
I see.
So unless you're in church, you're available. And one musician was famously remarked, 10 a.m. I didn't know there was more than one 10 a.m. in a day. So they're doing this at 8:45 in the morning. So we're going to make the best of it.
Double shot of espresso.
Exactly.
Oh, the class sounds so amazing.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I've done similar, like smaller workshops, maybe not workshops, but more one-on-ones with people when they start studying with me.
Okay.
And this is how I get, classical musicians who really want to start learning how to improvise. These are some of the things that, and this is not something style-oriented. It's not like too often when people learn improvisation, well, they learn to improvise within, say, a jazz format. And if they have to improvise outside of it, well, it always sounds like jazz, because they're speaking that language, and there's nothing wrong with that. But all particular forms of improvisation, whether you're playing like East Indian music, or maybe if you buy a Native American flute and you want to improvise on that, it has its own particular language. If you're listening to the traditional playing, so this is a way to kind of free your mind and free your creativity, is because you can learn to do these exercises. It breaks the music down to its essence. It's almost like atomic level, So, and I was supposed to have an etude book ready to be able to sell here with all this stuff. And I'm happy to say I guess got a bit too busy for the past couple of years, and I just haven't finished it. I've got sketches. I hope by the next convention I can have that done and published and ready to go. So
that's amazing.
So that's why I'm here. At least it's always fun to be here, especially with my wife in Tahoe, which is only 500 miles away.
Yeah.
It's like an excuse to come by and see friends. I see all these flute makers that I know, and I know people from Europe and all over, so I get to reconnect, and see you too, like reconnecting from 2012 when I saw you at your Texas Flute Society thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there is a sketch that is just like a little, carrot teaser for the listeners that you'd be willing to, like in PDF form, share, I can link it so people can get a taste of what the book would be about, even if it's an excerpt.
Yeah.
And so that way they're like, oh, I love this, and then they go and buy your book.
Sure.
I would love to be able to provide that for you and the listeners.
Yeah, I think for the class I have probably about 8 or 9 excerpts that I'm going to show if the AV stuff works.
Okay,
And each one is a PDF, and I'll be able to easily, Dropbox that to you in some way or another. And
shoot me
it's
an
done.
email, and I'll link it to my website.
Done.
Yeah, that'd be great, just to get the word out, because there's no reason for great content just to be,
I think what really works for this is that there's so many classical musicians want to learn how to do this, and there isn't really a good first step out there.
Okay.
And I think it works 2 functions for me. I mean, that's for somebody that has a need like that. But here I am in the later parts of my career. This is how I warm up every day with it, instead of the Taffanel Gobert, which are perfectly fine, and what I did for ages. Any daily studies, it becomes a grind after a while. And if you just are doing that, these exercises are a little more difficult. Okay. And I think they're perfectly fine for, say, advanced beginners, and up from there. It's not the right thing for beginners, but the thing is that it really loosens up my hands the first time I'm playing them, and it's especially the chromatic nature of the studies is it really loosens things up when I first get going in the morning, or if I haven't played all day and I'm going in to play my show. I've been working for the show Lion King for, my goodness, 21 years now.
Congrats.
And some days I go in and I haven't played all day, and I got to come in and warm up quick. And there's something about doing these interval studies. I can warm up really fast, and I'm ready to go. And it's so I hope to have the booklet ready within next year, and we'll be ready to go with that.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think it's thank you for taking the time to write down these exercises, and it sounds like you're very passionate, and these work. And what better way for students and professionals alike to be able to access and in a way see your method. And you're an expert in the field, and why not? It was very kind of you to share that, and I think we should take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it could. I could sell a lot of books, and people could get something that works. That's what I'm hoping. I don't expect it to be very long or very involved either. It's not a big treatise or anything like that.
Right.
I bet at the end of the day it'll be like 20, 30 pages, mostly music and a few concepts thrown in. Because the way you look at it and the way you attack it, so to speak, is what really counts. It's about a mental attitude. When you're playing written music, you know what you're going to play. You know, maybe you're might shift around the articulation. This is like you're coming up with it on the spot.
Okay.
But by not using music and having to go into different keys and constantly doing it and switching gears, this gives you the brain of what an improviser is doing.
Nice.
So
I think that's perfectly said.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to stop by.
Happy to. It's great to see you. And hello to everybody out there. And I hope to run into you one of these days.
Yeah. New York shout out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Come by New York. If you come by Lion King in New York, lean over the pit. I might be there. You never know.
Teresa Payne might be subbing.
Yeah. See, matter of fact, I think she is covering me right now as we speak. I think she's there today.
Yeah.
How about that?
Hello,
Teresa.
I just met her this year.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, I know you kind of through Dave Weiss. And she's like, I love Dave. And so we hit it off because we knew you.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah. So thank you. And I treasure your insights, and it's great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Flute 360 podcast. We are here at NFA in Salt Lake City. And as you can tell from the beautiful flute sounds, we are very much live. And I am sitting here with the wonderful Dr. Nora Garcia, who teaches at UCF in Florida. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. I'm so glad that you reached out, and I get to meet a new music friend or make a new music friend, and I get to pick your brain now.
Oh, you can pick it at any time.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. So I can tell already just how passionate you are as an educator. Just from our little 2-minute conversation, your face lit up, and let's talk about that student-teacher relationship and that dynamic and building trust so that way we can instill, great education with these, like an undergraduate student who will be with us for 4 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would like to share some great things. We're starting a new fall semester, I think, from many universities, and I think what's happening is our generations are changing. It used to be a long time ago that the generations would stay almost the same, but I think through the internet and through everything, everybody's growing really fast.
Yes.
So I think our students now, they're demanding that the education, it's a little bit much more, I don't want to say entertaining, but more engaging.
Okay.
And I found that when my students are coming to UCF, they are, fearful, but also demanding what it's going to happen. And I think one of the things I talk to them immediately is that the relationship is going to grow through time and through situations. And Heidi, I would like to share with you that 5 years ago, I was one of the first who did online teaching. So I did modules with my students. And at the beginning, I was very skeptical about how you can put music online.
Okay.
And what I did, I think it was very interesting, is the students still coming to the lessons, but all the different assignments, they have to record every week. And also they have discussions and all the different activities inside. Help them to see that their grade is not based just in performance. I think every student gets really scared if you miss a note on Etude or something, what's going to happen with your grade? And that creates a lot of
anxiety.
Of course. So one of the things I do in Easy to Trust is I tell them, listen, even you showing up, it's already points. You know, you're here and we're here to grow together.
Yeah.
And as they're looking at the modules, they have different activities. I try to put themes that are much more eager in how is the class. They start seeing something very interesting. If you have a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior, their schedules are not compatible. So sometimes the only way they see each other is in ensembles or flute class, but then you lose that interaction.
Yeah.
But when you go online, because every week everybody has a voice. It doesn't matter you're a freshman and you're new. When you go to the discussions, nobody's seeing, only they see your name. It's very easy to put your opinion, and it's very easy to see what is the opinion of all the people.
I see.
So what I found out is immediately in the first 3 weeks, those shy students start to voice their voice more freely. And as they're going into the flute class, they start coding things that they already did online. And the community of the whole studio grows really fast.
Neat.
So one of the things that we enjoy is to have comments about their recordings.
Oh.
And what I see is that because they're getting comments from all the different students in the class, as they're coming to the lessons, they're more open to get a comment.
Interesting.
So what I did something new these 2 years, Heidi, is all the students are coming in a group of 3 or 4.
Okay.
Instead of coming just one person. And sometimes when they have a situation, they can talk to their classmates and they can ask, what do you hear? And they start having more like a community sense instead, oh my gosh, it was me, correct? And sometimes they play together in the lessons, or the other students start mentoring the other student, what creates a leadership role. And then I come in and I give some perspective, so it's not like my only perspective.
Got it.
And what I see in the last 2 years, the studio grows very beautifully because they all respect each other.
Yeah.
And they're not scared to each other. They all know what they have. And it becomes a very interesting interaction.
Neat. And what I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that the student's voice is being heard.
Correct.
And because it's being heard,
Correct.
there's that trust.
That's right.
And then it's just more comfortable.
That's right.
Because you're listening to them as a teacher, and you're not just saying, I am teacher. You are
Correct.
student. But we are in this together, and we're collaborating.
Correct.
And then, hence, therefore, the community.
Correct.
Nice.
And I think what happens in music is many people come from different backgrounds. Sometimes you're coming from band backgrounds. Sometimes you're coming from orchestra. Sometimes you're coming from chamber music. Sometimes you have coming from none. You just got lucky, had a great audition, correct? And so what happens is all of a sudden you have all these situations and modifications about your own voice through the instrument. And sometimes we take it personally because you have to change.
Yep.
You have to change, correct? So what I think the message that I would like to give to my students is the change, it's friendly, and it's a change that any conductor or any person is going to ask. It's not because I want them to just do that.
Sure.
So I think being very versatile as a player is the way to go right now. You have to play from jazz to any type of music, classical, contemporary, and you have to have a certain sense of understanding your voice through all those styles.
Yes.
And that is what becomes a little bit difficult as an undergrad sometimes, is to mold our voice through it.
Yeah.
So.
I just had Dave Weiss come on about an hour ago, and as you know, he's the Broadway flutist for The Lion King.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's a really neat guy, real chill and laid back.
Wow.
So I go back to listen to that interview if you have not done so already, but he was saying the same thing you are, that, you know, each flute, because he plays all these ethnic flutes.
Correct.
Each flute has its own voice and its own language, and let's learn that language to be adaptive and to be able to, because his forte is improvisation.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And so I'm just hearing common themes, and it seems disconnected, but I had a point there. But yeah, finding that language and that voice, and it takes time. It's not an overnight thing.
One thing is very interesting is this generation texts a lot.
Yes.
Our generation, we still talk a lot.
Yeah.
Correct? That's the reason you're doing the podcast, and you're very famous because you put that voice on it. So what happens is that the flute is like singing, and you need your voice. So if you're texting and you're not using your voice as you're practicing an instrument, you don't know what voice you have.
Yes. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills because you did not know this, and it's just validating for me that like life is saying yes, go with this. In September, I'm launching a series of my own content on the parallels between music making and podcasting.
Fantastic.
Because the more I've done, this started as my DMA paper.
Wow.
And I, of course, had to broadcast and share my own research, because obviously the committee is not going to say, oh yeah, use Nora Lee for, you know, your paper, because that's cheating. So I use my own research, but then after that, it's just snowballed and has grown. And so while I've been with this platform for the last year and a half, I have become a better flutist.
I agree with that.
Because I'm communicating my ideas in a concise, organized way. I'm learning about inflection. I am learning about the energy of each person, because we're all individuals.
Yep.
And you have to be, yes, you can plan, but you have to be in the moment.
Correct.
And that is music.
That's right. We're shaping all the time our thoughts in a very higher level. And when we perform, that's exactly what we do. How many Mozart concertos we play?
Yeah.
Correct. But we have different situations as we play the Mozart concerto that we need to adapt into a situation. But I think the most important is that we express yourself through the Mozart concerto.
Yep.
So absolutely, that is something that right now we struggle a little bit, and I think you can see that as the sales of the orchestras right now. They have to go to movie that is more visual and a little bit more into certain things, correct, to connect with the audience a little bit more. So I think I'm expecting in the next 10 years, I think, Heidi, especially with your podcast that you're doing right now, it's going to be a change. It's going to be a change because I think we're going to have a more expressive society coming out. I think we're in a transition, and I can see that with my students. We went into the quiet generation that they were like holding, and that's where the anxiety is coming.
Oh, yeah. The shyness.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what I see right now, even in I just did a summer institute, is that this generation coming out is very expressive. They're very voiced. There's how they like things to be. And one of the things that I did with the student that I was talking before, that is in the alto flute competition, as a finalist, he did the arrangements, and what we go over themes and things that we like to voice.
Nice.
And then I explained that to all the different students, and we start creating roles. So everybody has their own role, and everybody can voice through the music, and it becomes a very neat activity through the whole week with them.
I love that. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So because we are talking about your studio, are there any upcoming events planned for 1920 academic year? Anything that you would like to highlight?
Well, we're trying right now. I take my students overseas. I took them to Guatemala. They've been in 3 national florist associations. And we're thinking about an international. We might go to Mexico to one of the festivals.
Okay.
And one of the things that I like is I just took some of my students this past summer, 2 weeks ago, to Italy. And my motto is that we need to learn from different cultures.
Yes.
Because then your voice becomes a different voice. You are not, when you go a different language that you don't know too well, you have to listen more than talk more. So you learn more from the culture, and also you can embrace that through music. So I use that a little bit through my experience with my students, and we're planning right now to try to do a trip like that to go to either Mexico. Also, we're trying to think we go to France as well. We would like to go to see the jury at the Paris Conservatory. So some of the students are, looking at different, and we have to fundraise for that, of course, because it's very expensive. But I think that's part of the voice. That's part for them to do creative concerts and gather together and then enjoy what they're doing. So
and have that community outreach.
Yes.
Yeah, and like you said, be creative with the fundraising process.
Absolutely.
Someday they're going to be trustees or treasurers or publicity coordinators on a nonprofit organization, and that's what they do. Like, let's write, for grants, and let's get money raised for our flute festival.
Absolutely.
So they're going to see that, and that's just one example, but they're going to see that throughout their career, and so it's good to get the skills now.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. So is there anything, as a podcaster, I have learned a very valuable lesson. I like to say, and rap. But my guests go, wait. So as a final, conclusion or summary of our talk today, is there anything that you would like to share, a little gold nugget, a tip or advice for a student? Just, it could be so random as I like Lay's potato chips. I don't know.
I'm going to talk a little bit about positive.
Okay.
And about, people think positive is just a smile. I think positive for me is something that you work every day of the best where you are.
Okay.
And one of the things that I love to work with my students about positivity, it's about a vision. You need to have a vision to be able to stay positive through that vision.
Yes.
So right now, some say, okay, I'm going to just be positive. But then you don't have a vision. You don't know what you're positive about. You are not identifying what you want to do.
Sure.
And I think as a musician, doesn't matter what piece you're doing, I think it's great to not only be positive about it, but to create your voice as positive it could be.
Okay.
And I think when I go into your voice, I go into your heart. And if you go into your heartbeat has a different rhythm.
Yeah.
And we need to, I think, as a musician, to link with that rhythm every day.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
right now, my heart is going very fast because I'm so excited to be here with you. And I think this is great. And I think this is being a phenomenal National Flute Association. I think it's being a very open canvas for many people. Different cultures are being here to meet and to have time to have a different vision and to to kind of coordinate differently. So
That's too kind. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, well, have a great rest of your time at NFA. I know it's so short and you're traveling home, but safe travels, and I am so glad we met.
Same here, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the NFA. We are very much live here, as you can hear, with all of these beautiful flute sounds. And I am here with the wonderful, intelligent, creative, mind-blowing Dr. Katherine Emeneth. And thank you for being here with me today. And let's talk about your platform.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great NFA so far, and with these conventions, always the best thing is meeting the people and seeing different people you've impacted or people that you've only known on social media. And one of the coolest things that has happened this NFA for me is that we just met all of the participants from my online course, the Flute Teacher's Playbook, and it was the first time that these folks had met in real life. And they finally got to shake hands and see who they were working with. And also at this NFA, I was able to do a session about money for musicians, which is something that is very important to me, that I advocate a lot about in my course and also just at universities and speaking. So the session I did was called Money Matters, and it's how to make money, how to organize money, how to save money. And as musicians, we're taught how to play the flute like no other and how to do all the theoretical stuff, but sometimes the business stuff does not get addressed while we're in school. So I think it's very important that musicians have a little bit of understanding about how to do money, how to make money, and maybe not doing the traditional path. And I was set up to do the traditional path. I have my doctorate and all that. And then I finally realized, man, I can be doing everything that I love and be my own boss, and that's okay. And I get to be creative every day. And so this session about money was about how to think outside of the box for other flutists who are considering going to entrepreneurial endeavors, how to really combine all of their passions into a sustainable life, and that's not necessarily on the traditional path. So we talked about how to come up with an idea, then we talked about how to save money for an idea, and then how to invest that money back into what you're doing and actually make a profit from it. We also talked about taxes, which is a huge thing for everyone. And I'm not a CPA, but I do, from doing my own thing, I've had to really figure that process out. And so it was a great session at NFA. And my Flute Teacher's Playbook course, we have that same thing, that same class about money. And it's been really awesome to impact other flutists, teach them how to reach their full potential, and to see them thriving, and to see them having a sustainable income being a full-time musician. So it's just really great to see the fruits of my idea really coming into reality and actually helping people.
Oh, I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, and to empower them and to give them their niche within the community.
Yes.
We're not going to be all Emmanuel Pahoods.
Exactly.
And that's good. That's fine. We need that because, box of crayons, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think you are definitely onto something, because my second series, I believe it's episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8, was about that very thing. And you are living it and breathing it every day, but I just touched on it for a month. But same thing, like invoices, emailing, recruiting, retention, success, taxes.
Exactly.
Because I didn't learn any of that in school. None of that. And I was a young 23-year-old finishing my master's, and then miraculously, I mean, this was such a God thing, but my friend Clara Loy was leaving the Texas area, and she goes, here are my 60 students.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
You know, that doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, you have to build, and that takes years.
Absolutely.
So, you know, yes, that was an amazing gift, and I had to learn on the job.
Yes.
But it was terrifying at the same time, because I'm like, why didn't anybody teach me a Schedule C?
Right.
Why did I not learn how to make an invoice and to do a formal business email to parents?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, to be honest, the reason why I did this course is, first of all, because I did an NFA presentation in 2014 called New in Town, and I've had to move 3 times and start studios in 3 different places. And some of them were when I was in school, and some were when I was not in school, and I've had to figure it out a lot. And very competitive cities where everybody already has a flute teacher, but I was able to do it and build studios, and it was from putting all of that information into one session at NFA in 2014 that this course was born. And it's great because books are wonderful and different resources are wonderful, but when you have somebody as a mentor who can guide you through and read your emails, your sample emails that you're going to send out to try to get students, and they can critique and really offer you some big valid suggestions, that's a whole nother ballgame because it's specific to you.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to create this, is because everyone's situation is different, and a book will not answer every single person's individual situation, but I can definitely help with each of those things.
I love that you bring that up, because it's on an individual basis.
It is.
Yeah, case by case.
Exactly. Because everybody has different talents and skills, and we can leverage those different talents and skills in order to build a thriving studio, in order to really have your own personal spin on what you do and not feel like that you're just another flute teacher that's in that same town doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I won't say his or her name because this is very much rough draft form for them, and I don't want to like throw their project out there and they're like, what did you do, Heidi? But there is somebody, same kind of concept, but for a different age group. And they want to be that mentor to work one-on-one because they are seeing a need. Like, wait a second, like somebody needs to sit down with this person and look at their package, tweak it, see how we can make it better.
Right.
So that concept is there, and I'm seeing that theme.
Absolutely. Yes. And then beyond that, you know, for my course, we do like video conferences every week for our class time, so we can actually interact with each other. And I've got people from Australia that are in the current course, and it's very much been international. And I've done it 5 times so far, and it's just been amazing to hear how people, even people that are current studio teachers who have been teaching for 30 years, take the course, and they all say that they have gained some new perspective or something new from doing it. And I think that's really creating a community. That's really creating a community of people who, you know, they know each other, and they know kind of the tenets of what we're talking about regarding business and studio development, and they feel like that they're not alone anymore, because it can be so isolating being a private music teacher and not having a whole herd of musicians that are around you. So it really helps build that community to feel like you're not alone. We get it.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I love that. And I love that theme of community.
Oh, absolutely.
That has come up so much in these 3 days, and all walks of life.
Oh, sure.
Full-time professors are mentioning it, private teachers are mentioning it, students are mentioning it, and I'm just like, e-gags. Like, this is amazing that I think flutists in general are very unique.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't see the same thing. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. But like tuba, like tubists. I don't see tubists in my brain at a festival having this same like connection and outreach and, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for musicians, it can sometimes be hard because we're so individualized in terms of our practice, where we're by ourselves when we're doing things, and sometimes it can be a little intimidating to reach out and make some connections, but once you do, it makes you so much better. It makes you realize that you're not alone, and there are other people that are just like you, and you're there to support each other.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
So one of my favorite Instagram stories of yours is your story about buying the house and getting your dream studio space of the basement.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Your face just lit up in that story. You could tell that it was like a huge feat.
Yes.
That you accomplished.
Exactly.
And I was so happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And, our new house that we just bought, I know it's our first time, my husband and I, first time owning a home, and we've been living all around the country, and he's from Germany, and so we're travel all the time. And so just to really, see the fruits of our labor of working so hard and not giving up and being able to afford a big house that has an entire flute studio in the basement where I have 5 rooms all to myself to do my thing. It's just like an amazing feeling to know that all of that hard work was worth it, and now I'm really settled and happy doing what I love by teaching flute, playing flute, helping other music teachers, doing all the things that I do. I have 7 different income streams, and so it gets a little bit intense sometimes, but I at least now have a home base, and juggling all of those have been worth it since now we're able to have a house.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that this is not live video, because Katherine's the only one here seeing me kind of tear up a little bit. I don't know, just something what you said about all our hard work and our fruits of our labor are paying off.
Yes.
And I know that feeling.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, when I bought my first car because of teaching a gazillion private flute students, it was like, this is happening.
Yes, exactly.
In college and grad school, I did not own a car.
Right.
It was a bike.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do,
Yeah, when I bought my first car, I was like, wow, okay, my fruits of my labor are paying off. So I don't know. It was great.
Yes. And the thing about it too that I love is like, when I show my playbookers, as I call them, the ones that take the course, when I do the video tour of my flute cave, I tell them, this is not right now for you.
Okay.
I have taught in instrument storage rooms. I have taught in smelly marching band uniform closets.
Yeah.
And I have had to go through a lot in order to, get to this point.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Everybody has to start somewhere, but just knowing that, what you think you're going to do is not going to necessarily be what you end up doing, and you have to be okay with that. I thought I was going to be a full-time professor.
Yeah.
And that's what I crafted my whole life for, to do that. And once I started seeing that I actually didn't want that after going through the application process and the interview process at several different schools and over several years, and my husband got frustrated not knowing where we were going to live in the next 3 months or next 4 months.
Yep.
And so then finally I said, you know what, let's just be our own boss, and let's do our own thing, and let's take our life into our own hands and live where we want to live, be where we want to be, and be happy, instead of always chasing.
Yep.
Let's just do our own thing. And
I am learning that the hard way right now. Because I was chasing last year when I graduated in May of 18. It seemed very hopeful to teach in Israel for a year. And I was putting stuff in a storage unit.
Wow.
And then last minute they said, we went with the other finalists.
Yes.
And I got stuck. I'm like, well, where do we go?
Right.
And I went back home to Fort Worth. That's where I am now. It's like, where will we be in 2 weeks from now? Like, my lease ends August 19th. Right. And I don't know where I'm going to be. Mm-hmm. So I get that.
Yes. It's very, I'm super type A. I love having a plan. I love knowing what I'm doing at every moment of every time of day. Yeah. And for me, that was just so stress-inducing and it caused so much anxiety that I just, it was not healthy for me anymore to continue down that path.
Okay.
And I, learned to be accepting of my own talents and my own gifts, and knowing that I can share those with others and empower them to not feel like they have to play in an orchestra or play in do higher education or be a public school teacher.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. And you just got to figure out what your gifts are.
Oh my gosh.
And how to help humanity. So.
That's amazing. Well, you do it so well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes.
So enjoy the rest of your time at NFA.
All right. You too.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm so glad we got to collaborate in these short 15 minutes.
Yes.
But we will have to do something in the future.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, we will be in touch for sure.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast episode. We are live here in Salt Lake City at the wonderful NFA Flutes Convention, and I am here with Jolene Madewell and Kallie Snyder. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your time and talent, and I can't wait to pick your brain. So you ladies had what I heard was a wonderful NFA event. Can you talk about that?
So our event was called Using Social Media to Grow Your Studio. And there was a panel of 4 of us moderated by Nicole Reiner, so myself, Kallie, Brittany Trotter, and Jessica Banks. And we took turns answering questions about social media, specifically about growing your studio. We had a great turnout and lots of good questions.
Awesome. Now, did you ladies have a handout or a PowerPoint?
We had both, yes. We did have a handout, which we ran out of, so hopefully they'll upload that to the NFA website. So you at home, if you didn't make it to NFA, you can maybe still get the handout. So yes, we had that. We did have a PowerPoint that just kind of showed some screenshots of our social media accounts.
Cool. If you want to email me the PDF, I can link it to the website, so that way people can just download.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Cool. Easy access. Cool. So what was the proposal process like? What did you learn through that? Because there's a lot of graduate students, finishing their masters, and they want to get their name out there and their research out there. Mm-hmm. And that proposal process can be intimidating.
So it was really easy for us because we didn't have to do anything. So Nicole Reiner, she headed up this whole thing. She put together the panel. She did the proposals. We just sent her our bio, and that was it. So It was super easy for us.
So what you're saying is find somebody to do it for you?
Totally.
That's the best way.
What a perfect question and answer. I love it. That is too fun. So is there an event here that has really just inspired you? And whoa, that piccolo is loud. But anything that you ladies have heard or seen that you just want to, comment on?
I always enjoy the evening concerts because they're just a showcase of all that's amazing, and I always leave really inspired. And also the reception of the whole crowd, it's almost everyone there, it's just everybody that shows up, and it's always really warm and supportive, so it just feels really good, inspiring, and like a nice community feeling.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just actually just came out of the Trevor James showcase, and they presented their the Happy Flutist project, which was amazing. It's probably my favorite thing that I've been to so far. It was like flute church.
Right.
Yeah, Jose Valentino was leading the whole thing. He's like, "What are you grateful for?" And people gave their testimony, and people improvised together, and it was just really beautiful and just really good positive energy, and it was just really impactful.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I so wish I could go and see these events. I'm grateful to be here, but it's just very limiting to see these things. So I'm just hearing about this stuff through you guys. So thank you for sharing. So you both are these social media experts and have these wonderful platforms that I know did not grow overnight. You've worked very hard and tirelessly with these platforms, right? Can you both tell me what inspired you to start your own individual platform?
Sure. I originally started as a blog when I was going into grad school, talking about teaching concepts and practicing and just really nerdy practice stuff. And I was afraid to share it with anybody for a long time. I put it on Twitter because I didn't know anybody on Twitter personally. I didn't want the world to see it. And a few years later, I started an Instagram, and I just really enjoy taking photos. I just found it really fun, and I started to realize that there was a community of flutists there, and I started becoming braver and posting videos of my playing just for myself to practice and improve, because I was alone in my home after graduating, and there's a really interesting rut that can occur of practicing and motivation. Yeah. So I found that it's helped me with practice motivation, and also it then turned into more
teaching, and as my own confidence grew, I found myself reaching out to more people, and so it's evolved into a really nice thing.
Funny how that goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
You know, as your confidence builds, you're like,
Definitely.
hey, I want to share this.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
And for me, I'm much newer to the Instagram game. I just had a personal account for a long time, and then I only started the Sound Musician. I just transferred my personal account to the Sound Musician just this past March in 2019. And that was inspired from honestly having an anxiety attack last year and kind of dealing with something that was much more intense than performance anxiety, and just kind of going through that journey and healing from that and recovering from that, and then talking to other people and realizing this is really, really common. A lot of people experience this, but we just don't feel comfortable talking about it. And so I just kind of felt, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I feel comfortable talking about having anxiety. It's
out there.
It's out there. I'm fine with it. I don't care. But so I started the Sound Musician just kind of as a platform to talk about real issues that affect real musicians, and it's slowly but steadily growing. I'm not the Instagram queen that Jolene is over here, but
she's just like on fire.
I know.
And the colors and everything.
I know. Currently, she's wearing a rainbow shirt, just so you all know.
And when I met her, she had a rainbow necklace on. It's your signature.
Yeah. Makes me happy.
Good. Yeah, color is needed in life.
Yeah.
Kallie, is it, to my understanding, and I apologize in advance if I'm misquoting, but when you mentioned the anxiety, was it, because I know you have your DMA, and with the DMA, it's in people's heads, you go towards professorship, right? And the job market is insane.
Yes.
And I remember, I think, one of your stories or your post mentioning, hey, wait a second, I can do my thing. And did the anxiety, sorry if I'm being too vulnerable, did the anxiety stem from that job search?
It was a perfect storm of events, but that was a factor in it. I was actually teaching at a summer camp, and I was one of the very few faculty members that wasn't a faculty member at a college or university. And so I just felt a lot of pressure around that, and kind of feeling like I needed to measure up. Like, here are all these my colleagues that have jobs at a school, and I'm just teaching privately and going into public schools and doing flute sectionals. And so it was definitely a perfect storm of things, but that definitely played into it. And a lot of the limiting beliefs I had about myself the 4 years since I finished my doctorate, and just, oh, I can't get a job, and it's impossible, and I'm not good enough, and all those things. So it just kind of, it all played out in one moment. And it struck that initial anxiety attack, which unfortunately lingered and became, sort of a temporary anxiety disorder. I don't really feel like I have it now. But it's all part of it.
No, and I empathize and sympathize with that, because that's my season right now. I mean, I graduated May of 2018 with my DMA, teaching privately, and job applications is a full-time job. I mean, it's insane. And if you get an email saying we would like an interview, it's like,
that's huge.
People read this? I'm at the point where on my cover letter it's going to say, Dear Search Committee, are you reading this? Sincerely, Heidi Begay. That's where I'm at in life.
I feel that.
Because it's just like, you don't even get recognition half the time that it's there, that they've accepted, or the submission went through. And you're just like, is anyone out there? And when I read that blog, I related so much, because that's my life right now. And it's not just 2 stories. This is times 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
This is, you know what I mean? This is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I have colleagues who received their DMA 6-7 years ago.
Exactly.
From notable schools like Boulder. And they do not have the typical job that they are supposedly trained for.
Right.
And we think that there's something wrong with us.
Exactly.
But it's like, wait a second, I have something to offer.
I mean, what you're doing right now. This podcast is amazing.
You're kind. It's literally, my mom throughout my life was like, have you met my daughter, the talker? And here I am. And it's like, well, it's just this perfect marriage. And it's funny how when you let life just, I'm a firm believer in God, and so I feel comfortable saying that. But when you let God take the reins and the steering wheel, and He shows you, the beauty and uniqueness of yourself, and you say, okay, like, I'm here, I'm showing up, and yeah, this may not be working for me, but then, like, other opportunities arise, and you're like, actually, this is kind of better.
Yeah.
What? I didn't plan for this.
Yeah.
I get to travel the world? What? You know what I mean? And I get to talk? And someday people will hopefully pay me for that. But, so you never know. And I think that's what I'm hearing from all three of us, as teachers and performers and professionals, is we want to instill that in our students. Because if you don't fit in that box, if you're not an orchestral player, if you're not a whatever, it's not that you failed. Your box is different.
Yeah, it has to be different these days. I mean, you have to be an entrepreneur, and that's why Jolene and I have spent time on social media. And kind of going back to our panel discussion yesterday, one of the things that I said was, you can't measure your success on social media purely by statistics and engagement. I mean, I know those are the typical measurements, but there are people out there that you are touching and you're impacting that may never like a single post, may never comment on a single post. And I even had somebody, after sharing that yesterday, somebody came up to me and said, I'm one of those people.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think if you have something that you want to share, that you're passionate about it, share it, and don't be discouraged by numbers and statistics and analytics and all those things. Okay. Just keep going. Just keep doing your thing.
Yeah. And the right people will show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have something about that, Jolene, that you would like to add?
Sure. I feel it's really important to not try to say something important all the time every day, because that gets really tiring. It's not realistic either to have the best idea in the world every time you make a post.
I love that.
I've tried to let go of the rules, and the rules say you must be engaging and you must just be valuable every time. And I'm just a person living my life in my home, and sometimes something really hits me and I feel struck and I need to share it, and that resonates with people. And sometimes I have nothing to say, and I only want to share the bagel emoji and a picture of a flute, and that's enough for the day. Like, it can be very simple, but I think there's not the rule that you have to put so much pressure on it, and I've felt that as well. So don't worry about if people don't like your bagel emoji picture. It's just, it doesn't mean anything.
That is so funny. It's so true. But that resonates with me because, like, for a while, in a graduate program, whether it's master's or DMA, you are around a lot of intelligent people and creative people, and a lot of times I was noticing that I would get so tongue-tied in conversations. And I'm like, this is not you, Heidi. And I realized I always thought I had to say something profound. And I would stumble over my words. And I wasn't Heidi anymore. And in the early stages of my podcasting, you heard my voice, but you didn't hear my voice. And I felt like I had to do that all the time. And I'm like, wait a second, like, I have something to offer, even if it is bagels today. That's fine, because I eat bagels in the morning, and that's my life, and my cats are on my lap, c'est la vie. And what you said, Jolene, about, like, if something really resonates with you, then I'm going to share it, but I don't know, thank you for sharing that, because I think when I watch some students communicate their ideas in lessons, I see that, maybe that shyness or them being timid and them not having that confidence or belief in themselves. And I'm just like, speak your mind. If somebody doesn't agree with it, then, that's their opinion, and, But I don't know. So a lot of that, both of what you said, resonated with me.
I think there's a really big fear of being wrong, and I struggle immensely, and it just clams me up if somebody asks me something and I will say I have no clue, and then they'll tell me the answer and be like, I totally knew that, but I didn't want to say it and be wrong. And I feel like I've come out of that a little bit. I'm not so afraid of doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, because it's fine if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You know, you learn something. But I see that a lot in my students as well, is fear of being wrong. They're afraid to answer questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm not going to judge anybody for not knowing something.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, so that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah. As a teacher, I find myself saying a lot, I will look that up. I'm not a walking encyclopedia. I know some things, but I can look that up. And, you know, it's good because then the student realizes, oh, she's not a walking encyclopedia. She's a human, and she will make mistakes, and she has to look at her resources.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I lead by example, then they might go to the library and actually look at a book. Those things still exist. But, yeah, so are there any, where can people reach you? And what are your platforms so that way people can start following you and, getting the message out?
So on Instagram, I'm at Jolene Flute. On Facebook, I'm Practice Room Revelations / Jolene Madewell. And my website is joleneharju.com. So they're inconsistently all three different.
Okay.
And then for me, I am the Sound Musician _ but if you just type the Sound Musician on Instagram, you will find it. I'm also the Sound Musician on Facebook. I also have thesoundmusician.com, which is the blog. So I'm a little bit more consistent, I guess. That's good. But then I also have my flute stuff at KallieSnyderFlute.com.
Very cool. Are there any final thoughts or nuggets that you want to offer before I cut you off prematurely? Because I've learned that too through interviews. People will be like, what? We were finishing and you didn't let me say blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. So I just kind of want to give you the floor for any final thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what we were talking about in our panel yesterday was authenticity, but that can freak some people out. I actually had somebody come up to me afterwards saying, like, how do you be authentic? Which seems like kind of a crazy thing, but I think you feel a lot of pressure. It's like, be yourself, be authentic. You're like, okay, how, what? So it's clunky at first. It's very clunky at first. I mean, when I first started doing videos, I mean, it's super awkward to do those Instagram stories at first when you're not used to talking, and the beauty of it is that it will go away. So just do it, and it gets less clunky. It gets smoother over time. And then if you just really hate talking on stories, you don't have to talk on stories. You can do something else.
Very cool.
I totally agree with that. Everything is really awkward at first. All things you do, and you figure it out and you get comfortable, and it's a matter of being familiar with what you're doing, and you can't become familiar if you're afraid of making a mistake. So you will make a mistake. It's fine. No one's even noticing.
Yeah, exactly.
So comfort.
I love that. And it relates. I swear there's a point. But when I talk with my friend Christopher, he talks about authenticity. And sometimes, like you said, how do you be that or how do you do that? I don't know if this is, like I said, relatable, but I think it is. He said to go back to your roots and to find who you are, think of your childhood and think of 3 things that define Kallie and Jolene and Heidi. And for me, it's ballet, cats, and pigs.
That's so funny. I did ballet and I have 2 cats.
Yeah, there you go. 2/3. Yeah, we're there. You're like, I don't want to claim the pig part, but yeah.
I have no experience with pigs.
Okay. I just like their curly tail. But I'm from Chicago, so my best friend Apton always laughs at me. She's like, Heidi, you're from the city. Like, you are not anywhere near a farm. You have no right to, But anyways, so I don't know if that kind of, goes along the same lines. Maybe that's one step or one tool to find that. For me, it's tangible because I love numbers, 3, And then I think we lose ourselves sometimes too. Because like in college, like I realized I had a lot of performance anxiety with, going into lessons. And it was because we were being critiqued all the time. But before that, I would play flute on stage for people, no problem. I'd be in ballet performances for thousands of people in Chicago, no problem. And then all of a sudden I'm trembling? Like, what the heck? You know, and when Christopher said that, find your 3 things that bring you back to your roots, I'm like ballet, dance, movement, pink tutus, lots of makeup that is so not needed, hairspray and that smell. Then I'm like, wait a second, I wasn't nervous on stage. It was a joy for me. And then I'm like, how can that translate to a flute in my hand? Yeah.
That speaks to me because one of the things that I've learned how to include in my presence online is, like, in my childhood, I would do a lot of colorful art things, and I never was one of the art people. There's art class people. I never got to really take art class because band was happening, but so there was an identity there that I didn't have, but it was in me, and I would design rooms on paper watching HGTV when I was little, and I started to realize I'm creative and I'm willing to say it out. Like last year, I decided I can say it out loud and let people know I'm okay with telling myself I'm creative, and I started to do more creative things, and then I saw more that felt really authentic, and it felt joyful to be creative more openly. So I love that you said that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for your time and talent and energy. This has been a blast.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I love this podcast. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you. Is this your first official podcast?
No.
Oh, okay. Womp womp.
Our first official live NFA podcast.
Yes.
Okay.
In person.
Thank you for turning that around so beautifully. That's okay. I don't mind being sloppy seconds, but it's been a joy, and I can't wait for future collaborations possibly, and safe travels.
Yes, thank you, Heidi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast episode. We are live here at NFA in the beautiful city of Salt Lake in Utah, and I am here with a dear friend of mine, Bethany Padgett, who has her DMA, so Dr. Padgett, and she had the wonderful opportunity to present an NFA poster here at the exhibit hall. And so I wanted to bring her on for her to talk about her topic and poster. So if you were not able to see it or attend her event, then this way you feel like you have. So welcome, Bethany, and I am so glad you are here on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us the title of your poster and give us, I guess, an elevator pitch.
Yeah, great. So my poster was West Meets East, Ravi Shankar's Morning Love for Western Flute, Sitar, Tabla, and Tampura, a collaboration with Jean-Pierre Rampal, who was a French flutist. So I talked a little bit on the poster about, first of all, the historical context of Ravi Shankar, give a little bit about his background, and then I talked a little bit about how it led up to the collaboration with Jean-Pierre Rampal and the album they produced in 1976.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I talked about how I did a transcription and analysis of one of the pieces they collaborated on.
Okay.
The one that I did the poster on, which was Morning Love.
Amazing. And for those graduate students out there and DMA students out there, maybe take Bethany's lead. I don't know if this is a topic that you had explored in school, but maybe be aware of what you're choosing for your topics for research papers, right? Wouldn't you kind of agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love this topic because it was something really new. This hadn't been done before, transcribing this piece. And a lot of Western flutists get into the grind of practicing for their performances that are coming up and their auditions, and it's usually all Western classical music. And we get into having a blinder on, and we forget that there's a whole world of music that's out there that can enrich our own interpretation of the music that we're making.
I couldn't agree more. And the theme throughout all of these interviews these last 3 days have been community, inclusion, diversity, outreach, and so I'm hearing the same from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that was Ravi Shankar's mission. He felt like it was, let me say, this was one of his quotes, that he said, ever since I was a boy in my teens, living in Paris and touring with my brother Uday's troupe of dancers and musicians, I have felt a strong desire, almost a missionary zeal, to bring the beautiful, rich, and ancient heritage of our classical music to the West and to bring about a deeper comprehension and appreciation of it. So I wanted to extend that and to spread the knowledge of this piece.
Yeah. So I see this beautiful handout with musical excerpts and quotes. Is there a way, of course, if you feel comfortable, to maybe get a PDF file to link it so people can see this? Or is this something that you are going to be offering for purchase?
I can definitely offer a PDF for free.
Okay.
And I can include a link to my dissertation, which has even more information in depth about it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And maybe a student out there or a professor can do like an interlibrary loan if they need to access your dissertation. So
the dissertation is free online if you just Google the title and my name.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You don't even need a library to do it. It's the miracle of the internet.
Exactly.
I love it. And you are currently teaching in the DFW area.
Yes.
Yeah. And any academic highlights, anything that you're anticipating for this upcoming academic year?
At the college that I'm teaching at? Sure. Well, I'm planning on doing my private studio and then also teaching an American music class. And that'll be 2 days a week.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any final thoughts or comments that you want to share? So I feel like you have completely, like I said, shared what you want to say. It could be as random as be kind to your neighbor or I like the color pink.
Well, I would just say that I would encourage anyone listening to listen to more music than what is your standard. So I'm guilty of putting my favorite artist or artists in Spotify and then saying play like artists, and then it's just a feedback loop. And it doesn't get me listening to anyone new or to any new genres. So I really encourage people to open their ears and their minds to music from different cultures so that we can, as a whole, bridge cultural gaps. And I think that learning about other music can help you learn about that culture and get you interested in the people, in the place, in their customs, in their history, and then maybe even motivate you enough to travel to that country to explore all the richness of the culture. And you can do that through listening to music from your own living room. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Very well said. Be inspired to travel, to learn, to maybe learn a new language.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe even get some Venetian, earrings from Italy. That will inspire you to say, ciao or bella. Or as you can see, my Italian is very limited. So I appreciate that nugget, and thank you for being such a supportive, encouraging, intelligent teacher and performer. And the community is so lucky to have you in the Texas area.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wish you all the best for this upcoming academic year.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Flute 360 podcast episode. Today, I am here with Dr. Cobus de Toit, and we have done an episode in the past.
We have.
Yeah, and I'm so glad
I'm back.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad that we got to reconnect at the wonderful Wm.S. Haynes booth. And so thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. It never gets old with you. So
thanks. I appreciate that.
Always new and exciting.
I appreciate that.
Sure. So let's talk about your NFA event that happened today, which is Saturday? Is today Saturday?
We are on Saturday, yeah.
Okay. It happened at 11:30, titled Duos Elevated.
Yeah, so it was great. I had about half a program, about 30 minutes, and I played two pieces. The one was titled A Room of Quiet by Nathan Hall, who is I spoke about him briefly in the previous episode I did, and he's a Denver-based composer, and it was a piece that is sort of centered around the text that one would receive if you visit the meditation room at the United Nations headquarters. So this room is designed by Dag Hammarskjöld, who's the second Secretary General of the United Nations. And he created this beautiful sort of meditation space where that just has a center block in the middle of the room with a light source, a single light source. And the composer, what I love about this piece, I have to narrate and sing, and the pianist narrates and sings, and I play into the piano, but it's very sort of introspective and slow moving, and just really, really meditative, which is it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And then I finished with Valerie Coleman's Wish Sonatine, which I think is honestly going to be, it's already establishing itself as sort of one of the canon pieces of our repertoire. And I think more and more people are just learning about it, and it's just really has just taken off. It feels a lot like Jolivet when you practice it in a way. It's like that sort of caliber of just runs up and down and pyrotechnics, and then all of a sudden this beautiful slow melody, and it's just a beautiful, beautifully written piece.
Wow.
So it was great. It's sort of like, it was nice to play two completely divergent pieces.
Okay.
One really introspective, one really extroverted in nature in a way, but both dealing with sort of, the resilience in the face of adversity, if that makes sense. Because Wish and a Teen centers around the slave ships that came over from Africa. And you can really hear the ships in the harbor, and it sort of celebrates all, like blues and jazz, it celebrates all these styles of music that came out of this tragedy. So it was a great program, and Wish finishes on a fourth octave D that you have to sustain, and it spoke beautifully today. So anything that happened before that, I would call that a win. If I can finish with a D that sounds in the fourth octave for a few measures, I'm good. I'll call that a successful day.
I was gonna say that sounds like a win to me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Congratulations. I'm so bummed that I didn't get to hear you play.
Well, you've been busy.
Yeah, but I'm so excited to be here, of course. I'm going to have to snag, a recording or something.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was beautiful. Yeah, very cool. So we are wrapping up the summer, and you have had an extensive one. With Australia and...
Yeah, it's been great. So, I went to Australian Flute Festival for the first time.
Okay.
Which it happens every other year, and it was a beautifully, beautifully run festival, and I've never been to Sydney before, which is such a great, beautiful city, and it's on the harbour, of course, and the conservatory is right by the Opera House, and and it was just great getting to know a bunch of flutists that I would never run into, because you come to NFA and you get to know a lot of the American flutists, but it was nice to sort of learn of a whole new community down south that and the playing level was really high, and it was great. That's how I felt with my experience in Romania. I felt like this is good. I'm throughout the year I'm around American flutists for the most part, and then to be at the international level, I'm like, that's great to hear a French and then a Russian and then a German player, an Italian player,
a Spanish player back to back.
There's a whole world out there.
Yeah, and it's like, this is exhilarating, and I learned so much. So I guess maybe what we are saying is travel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to Australia, and then the family and I went a little bit on vacation to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which is important to take time off,
Yes.
And now I'm doing this, and then next week I'm traveling to Montana, to Whitefish, Montana. I'm playing on Tuesday. I'm playing the Reinecke Concerto with the Glacier Symphony, and then I'm doing some chamber music concerts with a violinist and a pianist. And we're doing this a fun sort of Rota trio and a Bach trio sonata, and I'm playing Poulenc sonata on the concert. Yeah, so and then I have a good 2 weeks before school starts with my new and improved studio of 20 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah, so I'm just the next 2 weeks I'm just going to plan and,
Yeah.
and then we have the new music festival at Wm.S right after school starts. So I have to learn all those notes, and which is sometimes a little bit, takes longer than you want with all the little symbols and things. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So we got the chance to talk randomly, air quotes, on the sidewalk to dinner on Thursday night. And you mentioned that the concerto, you are in the process of memorizing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that like?
Well, so it's interesting because my teacher, Christina Jennings, would always say that memorization is a muscle and you have to practice it. And I definitely agree with her, like having this concerto next Tuesday, because I've played the Reinecke Concerto before, and I've played it from memory. To me, the Reinecke is one of the trickier ones to memorize because there's so many sections that's similar, that's just in a different key, or you just get out of the rondo theme a slightly different way, and if you miss the off ramp, you end up like 2 pages later. So the tricky thing for me about the Reinecke to memorize is really knowing the roadmap.
Okay.
It's easy to sort of memorize the chunks of music, but then to really remember like this chunk goes here, and this is how I transition into this section, and that. So I've toyed around. There was a time in my life where, especially when I was doing a lot of international competitions, where every round had a required memorization component. So there was a time where I would play entire recitals from memory, which is if no one's ever done that, I would highly encourage you to do that for multiple reasons.
Okay.
Because it's a test in mental endurance, you know, and then so I've thought about this a lot because some people, especially people with perfect pitch, memorization comes super easy, right? And there's people that can memorize a piece in a day, where I am not one of those people. I need a lot of time.
Okay.
So I think one thing that's important with memorization and important in playing in general is don't compare yourself to somebody else. Like if Susie Q can memorize something in a day, great for Susie Q, but you're not Susie Q. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's just you have to learn your own sort of parameters and really what makes you comfortable on stage.
Yeah.
Because for some people, if you have perfect pitch, you just kind of play after your ear, right? If you don't, you will probably need a much deeper understanding of the harmonic progressions and of patterns and sequences. And, so I do have a process for memorization, and it's a little bit different than what I've heard other people do.
Okay.
Because I started out as a pianist.
Oh.
So I feel like a lot of memorization revolves around muscle memory, right?
Yes.
And so what if that muscle memory slips and then you're sort of swimming all of a sudden in the deep ocean and you have no idea where you are?
Yeah.
So what I force myself to do is if I can't play the piece I'm playing from memory, if I can't play it on the piano, just with my right hand, right? Yeah. Then I don't feel ready. Which is so what I like about that, it adds a visual component.
Yes.
So as I'm performing from memory, I can actually see the keyboard sort of like play off in front of me. And it's very different because I think your ear is also led by timbre in a way, right? And all of a sudden when you hear the same tune on a different instrument, all of a sudden you start doubting yourself and you just, so that's kind of my little trick that I use or do that I haven't heard anybody else use before. But Yeah, it's the older you get and the more busy you get, the harder it becomes to really memorize because it does take time.
Yeah. And when you're a dad and a full-time professor and, it adds up.
But I think it's important. Like I always feel it's important to really push yourself and always make yourself feel challenged. And so this just happened to be the challenge on my plate right now.
Nice. I love it.
Because it's very easy to just go, well, I'm going to use the music,
Okay,
and then it'll be, and it takes a whole layer of stress off of it, and it's really. But I feel like it's important to live sort of on the fringe of what really makes you uncomfortable. I think it's good because it makes you question and think and reassess and you keep on growing.
Yeah. Keep pushing the envelope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when I think about memorizing, I'm glad you tapped into the visual component. I'm a very visual person.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times, I think it was, I forget her last name, but she was a harp professor. She just recently passed away, unfortunately, from the University of Arizona. And she would talk about memorization techniques where she would hold the music up to the northwest upper left-hand corner.
Oh, yeah.
And look up this way because it will tap into certain parts of the brain.
Oh, wow.
And that helps me a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, sometimes, my memory will kick in, whether it's a muscle memory thing or an oral thing or a visual thing. So, for me, I use a little bit of the three, and it depends on where I am in the music, which one will kick in.
Oh,
but I don't know. I think... just using your different senses.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I like this analogy of a chair, where, if you have different legs of a chair, and that's part of the memorization process, right? So one, I think muscle memory is a great thing, actually. And for me, personally, the moment I feel... I've learned that when I'm performing from memory and I feel a little bit lost, or I feel like things are slipping, I actually deliberately slip into. I almost turn off my brain. I deliberately slip into muscle memory. Because I feel it sort of it takes over, which is great. And then when I'm in the memorization process, I also actually drill the muscle memory. I take a passage and I drill it 25 times over and over so that the muscle memory gets there. But then also, I do think having a real sense of structure and where things lie, and so that's sort of a second leg of the chair. You know what I mean? And then, so if you just sort of keep on adding, eventually you have a very stable chair. Versus I think a lot of people just play it over and over, and it's basically just muscle memory.
Okay.
Where I think if you can add a visual component there, you have another leg. You know what I mean? So the more legs you can add, the more steady the chair. I had somebody come to Wm.S. Amherst once to do a class on memorization, and she had us do this exercise where you stare at a flame of a candle until you can actually see it when you close your eyes, where you can really see it vividly. And for me, it took a good 20 minutes to get there, where I can really. And she said, that's how you get to that sort of visualization part, where you can really see the music, the sheet music, sort of going in front of you, right? And pianists like Gieseking used to do that all the time on the train. The rumor goes, he would learn a Chopin etude on the way to a train to a performance, right? Because he just had this incredible visualization ability, to just really learn music while looking at it, and he would just on the way to a performance just learn it, and it's incredible.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's always techniques that we can share and find what works well for you and for your students.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, as we are heading into the academic year, what are some highlights, events, recitals coming up that you would like to share?
Oh, sure, yeah. So I spoke of the last time we spoke. I told you guys about the Western Mass Flute Day, so we're doing that again. Nancy Stagnita is our guest artist this year, which I'm really thrilled about because she does. She's equally proficient in jazz and classical, so I think that'll be really great for people in the community and my students to sort of really explore that aspect of playing. Okay. And she's going to do a improvisation for beginners class, and so I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I've got some projects coming up, like my Naxos CDs will be released, the first one in October, so that's very exciting. That's about 3.5-4 years of my life finally coming to fruition. So that's very exciting. So in the next academic year, I'll have 3 CD releases by Naxos. Yeah, and then I'm traveling a bunch. I'm going to Japan for a few master classes in the International Low Flutes Festival. Like I said, the new music festival is coming up. Yeah, I'm playing with Boulder Chamber Orchestra. It's great. It's just
Life
always
is good.
busy. Yeah, exactly. Nothing to complain about.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember, but you reminded me so kindly on Thursday that we forgot to do picks.
Oh, yes.
On your
episode. I never got to do my pick of the week. I felt very robbed.
Oh, no. You felt gypped. And
I only felt robbed after I listened to it and listened to other episodes, and then I thought, like, she never gave me a pick of the week.
I am so sorry. But you can have 2, 3, 4 picks.
Oh,
I will make up from the past and redeem myself. So it can be as random as cold brew, high brew coffee, double espresso, Lay's potato chips, a certain app, a book, a movie, you name it, whatever you want.
Sure. So my pick that I would like to share is a book called The Perfect Wrong Note by W.M.S. I have read this book about 5 times, and it's so jam-packed and thick with information that I'll read it 5 more times. It's such a great, and I think it's really incredible, and sort of also this time where we live. You and I spoke a little bit about this need to be, when you perform, this feeling of that you need to be absolutely perfect, you know? And the premise behind this perfect wrong note is that when we are children, and I see this in my own children, when we experience music, it really comes from the sternum, and it's a whole body experience. And then the older we get, the more it becomes sort of frontal cortex and just our hands and forearms orientated, you know?
Interesting.
And so this whole book sort of revolves around the idea of getting music back to the center, to the sternum. You know, that it's really a full body experience, that and that you can play the perfect wrong note, that you can play a wrong note and still be okay with it. You know, I cannot recommend that book highly enough. I think it's I recommend it to all my students too. I think it's awesome.
I've read it. Dr. William Westney was one of my professors at Texas Tech.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and he would talk about he feels very privileged to grow up where he got to dance and move to music as a toddler. Yeah. And just experience that and integrate that into his whole being.
Oh, yeah.
And he just approached his piano studies in that way, naturally, without even giving it a second thought. And people were like, why is this so natural for you? Why, you know, and he realized his upbringing. Yeah. And he's a brilliant man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was cool to take a class with him and learn from him. And and I remember our sidewalk talk where you talked about visualizing, like giving yourself, you know, a magic number of like, I will allow myself 12 mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if it happens, then you put it in this like imaginary vault.
Yeah.
And then you forgive yourself and then you move on. And I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it goes hand in hand with that book.
Absolutely.
And that premise that you were mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then along those lines, my second pick, seeing that I need to catch up here, my second pick, it's actually along that same sort of vein. Yeah. It's a show on Netflix called Losers. And it's a documentary series on basically sports people that were really at the height of their career, at the top of their game, and then they had a major downfall and how they recovered from that. Yeah. Right? And that's fascinating, sort of the psychology behind that. And they interview, athletes all the way from curling, which I had no idea curling is such a fascinating sport.
Yeah, yeah. I knew that for some reason.
Yeah, when I watch the Olympics, it's like the most boring thing. But now that I've watched this episode, there's actually a lot that goes into it. It's pretty amazing. Like ultramarathon athletes, the ice skaters. I think it's a great sort of. There's lots of food for thought there. Okay. You know, because I do think there's a lot of similarities between playing psychology and sports psychology, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my 2 picks, Heidi.
Do you want to do a couple more?
Plus mint choc chip ice cream. That's my 3rd pick.
Is there a specific brand like Ben & Jerry's or Bluebell?
No, any brand will
Okay.
do. Rum and raisin also is like very high up on the list.
Ooh, I've never had that.
That's very good. If
Yeah?
you've never had rum and raisin ice cream, I would.
okay.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'll try that. One thing, dessert-wise, I always heard about pistachio this and that.
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of made me nervous because I'm like, that's a nut. Why is that in dessert form? But when I went to Greece, it was pistachio gelato.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. It's my new favorite thing.
I know. That's my wife's favorite too, pistachio,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, see, there you go. So that's my pick, and I'm only going to do one pick because I will go on a tangent if I don't. But yeah, so I am so glad we had this time together.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, and you are always an inspiration, and yeah, thanks for sharing your talents and being honest, and we appreciate you.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Today's sponsor is brought to you by J&K Productions. Did you know that not only are they a production company for podcasts, but they are a recording company for musicians? Any musical recording needs that you may have, J&K Productions can fulfill that need. They have all the necessary equipment and expertise to record your next flute recording for college or graduate auditions, competitions, summer festivals, or a flute album. J&K Productions can record any setup imaginable, from solo flute, small chamber, flute and piano, and much more. Consider J&K Productions for your next recording project. Contact them at jkproductions.media. Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. For more information, please visit HeidiKBegay.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review in the iTunes store. Let's talk about flute.